AITA for stopping cooking after my wife let her friend insult me? Alright, let me tell you about this because, honestly, I'm still pretty steamed. I've been a chef at a pretty popular spot downtown for years. It's a good gig, and the kitchen is my world. Now, don't get me wrong, cooking all day for strangers is one thing, but it's different when I'm bringing food home for my wife, Sarah, and our kids. We have two little ones, Ethan, who's 8, and Lily, who's 6. Truthfully, I love making them dinner every night. I finish my shift, pack up something delicious, and bring a hot meal home for the whole family. That's been our rhythm for years. I handle dinner during the week, and on weekends, Sarah takes over. It works for us. She handles breakfast and lunch on weekdays, so we both pull our weight. It's not like we signed a contract, but it was just the routine we fell into, and it worked well, at least until recently. Last Friday, Sarah had some friends over for a girls' night. I'd already worked a long shift, but I didn't want to break our routine, so I prepared dinner as usual. When I got home, I chatted with them for a bit before heading off to bed early. That's when her friend Stacy, who tends to be brutally honest, started grilling Sarah about how we split the household chores, and she wasn't subtle about it. She said something like, "So, does Mark ever cook for you? Or is he one of those husbands who only cooks at work and thinks he's done his part?" I was expecting Sarah to jump in and set the record straight, because I'm not the kind of guy who sits around doing nothing at home. I cook every single night, even on my busiest days. But instead of saying something like, "No, Mark cooks every night," or anything along those lines, Sarah just laughed and played along. She made some kind of joke about how she prefers her own home cooking and how I never cook. That just egged Stacy on, and she launched into a story about her ex-husband, who, according to her, was the laziest man on the planet. She went on about how he never did anything around the house and how she had to handle everything herself all the time. Sarah was just laughing, nodding along, and saying things like, "Yeah, it's so hard to get him to cook at home," completely throwing me under the bus, as if I were some lazy bum who does nothing. I didn't say anything at the moment because, it was her night with her friends, and I didn't want to spoil the mood, but I'll be honest, it really got to me. Here I am every night, after work, making dinner for everyone, making sure Sarah and the kids eat well. Sometimes I even make different things because Sarah likes one dish and the kids like another. So yeah, it stung to hear them joke around as if I do nothing, especially coming from my wife. What was the point of that? I went to bed early, trying to put it out of my mind, but I couldn't shake it. The more I thought about it, the more it annoyed me. Why didn't she say anything? I get that she wanted to keep things light with her friends, but I don't think you should do that at your partner's expense, especially when it's not true. In my opinion, your partner should have your back, not pile on, even if it's just a joke. The next day, I thought maybe she'd bring it up, or, I don't know, realize she'd made me look bad. But no, she acted like everything was normal. So I waited until after breakfast, when the kids were out of earshot, and I brought it up. I said something like, "Hey, last night, when you guys were joking about me not cooking, that kind of hurt. I cook dinner every night. So why did you just laugh and let it slide like it was true?" And she just looked at me like I was overreacting. She said, "Oh, come on, Mark, it was just a joke. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously." But it's not just a joke when it comes from your partner, It's someone who knows everything you actually do, and yet they act like you don't. I tried to explain that I found it disrespectful, that it made me feel like all the effort I put in every day is worthless. I thought she would get it, but instead, she got defensive. She said she was just trying to keep the mood light and didn't want to make Stacy uncomfortable by defending me. She was acting like I was asking her to start a fight, when all she had to say was, "Actually, he does cook. In fact, he brings dinner home every night." But no, apparently that would have been too awkward. She told me to just let it go and not be so sensitive, which, to be honest, just added fuel to the fire. I tried to stay calm, but it was clear we weren't seeing this the same way. At that point, I didn't know what else to say. I felt like anything I said would fall on deaf ears, so I let it go for the moment. I went about my day, took the kids to the park for a bit, tried to cool off, but in the back of my mind, I still had this nagging feeling, like a weight on my shoulders, reminding me that my own wife thought so little of what I do for our family that she'd rather laugh with her friend than defend me. Yeah, that was my Friday night and my whole weekend. And yeah, I know some of you might say I'm overreacting, but it's not just about the joke. It's about what it represents, you know? I'm putting in the effort every day, making sure there's good food on the table for everyone. And in return, I get treated like I'm not even worth acknowledging. It might seem like a small thing, but it's hard to forget when you feel like all that work, all those nights cooking so your family can have a good meal, was dismissed for a quick laugh. It leaves you wondering where you stand, and maybe that's what hurts the most. After spending the whole weekend mulling it over, I finally decided I couldn't just let it go. I mean, yeah, it was supposed to be a joke or whatever, but to me, it wasn't. It felt like Sarah was okay with letting her friends think I'm a lazy husband who doesn't pull his weight, when that couldn't be further from the truth. Monday rolled around, and after I got back from work and put Ethan and Lily to bed, I brought it up again. This time, I wanted her to really understand why it bothered me so much. I told her, "Look, Sarah, I know it wasn't a big deal to you, but it made me feel like all the effort I put in doesn't matter. It's like you'd rather laugh with your friends than say something nice about me." She looked at me like I was making a huge mountain out of a molehill. Her whole attitude was like, "Are you seriously still talking about this?" And then she says, "See, I already told you it was just a joke. Why are you still so obsessed with it?" I was trying to stay calm, but it was getting harder. I told her, "It's not just about the joke, Sarah. It's about you not even correcting her. It's one thing to laugh something off, but it's another thing to just sit there and let your friend believe I do nothing. It's like you'd rather they think that than stand up for me." And that's when she got defensive. She started saying she didn't want to make her friend uncomfortable, that she was just trying to avoid an awkward moment. But to me, it sounded like she was avoiding awkwardness at my expense. I couldn't help but say, "So it's better to let me look bad than to make your friend feel uncomfortable?" She sighed like I wasn't getting it and said, "I'm sorry you took it that way, Mark, but that's not what it was at all. I just wanted to avoid arguing with Stacy over something so trivial." At that point, I was beyond frustrated. She wasn't getting it at all. It was like she'd rather I be the punchline of a joke than risk her friend feeling awkward. And yeah, it might seem small, but it didn't feel small when I was the one being made to look bad. So I told her, "I don't understand how you can say it's trivial when I'm the one doing this every day. You think I love coming home tired from work and still having to cook every night? I do it because I want to, but it would be nice to feel like it's at least valued." She crossed her arms and just stood there, giving me that look you get when someone thinks you're making a big deal out of nothing. And then she says, "Well, maybe I thought you'd just let it go since it was just one comment." It was like there was a wall between us. I was trying to explain that her lack of support made me feel like she didn't respect what I do, and she was just brushing it off like I was being oversensitive. So I said, "Okay, if it's not a big deal to you, then maybe I'll just stop bringing dinner home. That way, you won't have to feel awkward or cover for me. After all, apparently, I'm not doing much anyway." I thought that would get through to her, but instead, she rolled her eyes and laughed, saying, "Oh, don't be ridiculous, Mark. Are you really going to stop bringing dinner just because of a joke?" By then, I'd had enough. I didn't want to argue anymore because it was clear she wasn't going to get it. I just looked at her and said, "All right, we'll see." Then I went to bed because there was no point in dragging it out if she wasn't willing to listen. The next day, I went to work and decided this time I was going to follow through. I still brought food for the kids because I didn't want to drag them into this, but I didn't bring anything for her. I figured if it's really not important, then she won't mind, right? When I got home that night, I saw her glance at the food bags, expecting her share as usual, and when she realized there was nothing for her, she looked at me like I'd grown a second head. She said, "Are you really not going to bring me anything anymore?" I just shrugged and told her, "Well, since you think I don't cook, I figured you wouldn't mind handling dinner yourself." Her face turned red, and she was clearly annoyed. She muttered something under her breath and went to the kitchen to make herself a sandwich. I could tell she wanted to argue again, but I think she realized I was in no mood to go around in circles. For the next few days, I stuck to my plan. I'd come home with food for Ethan and Lily and nothing for her. Every night, she'd give me this annoyed look, but she didn't say anything. It was a silent, tense standoff, with her clearly waiting for me to cave. And to be honest, part of me was hoping she'd get the point and realize that maybe I wasn't being so unreasonable. But every night was the same. She'd make her own food, give me that look, and we'd go to bed without talking much. At one point, I thought maybe I was taking it too far, but then I'd remember her laughing with her friend, acting like everything I do doesn't matter. That frustration was what kept me going. Finally, one night, as I was putting the kids to bed, Ethan asked me, "Dad, why do you only bring food for me and Lily? Doesn't Mom want any?" Kids, man, they pick up on everything faster than you think. I didn't want to involve him, so I just told him, "Mom's making her own food this week, buddy." He looked at me, confused, but didn't press it. It's funny, because I felt a little petty, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I was in the wrong. I tried talking to her. I tried explaining why I was upset, and she just blew it off. I felt like this was the only way to make her see I was serious. If she wasn't going to value what I do every day, then maybe she needed to experience what it was like not to have it. I admit, part of me just wanted her to apologize, to say something like, "Wow, I didn't mean to make you feel like your work doesn't matter," but I didn't want to get my hopes up. For now, all I could do was hold my ground and see if she'd come around. And so another day passed. Same routine, food for the kids, nothing for her, and that look from her every night, daring me to back down. It felt like a weird, silent stalemate, neither of us willing to give in, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was being walked all over. A few days into this silent showdown, I noticed Sarah's patience was starting to wear thin. She was not happy about me no longer bringing her food, even though she tried to act like it didn't bother her. Every time I came home with food just for the kids, she'd shoot me a quick glance, as if hoping I'd hand her something. But then she'd turn away and fix something for herself, usually a bowl of cereal or a quick sandwich. And this is where it gets interesting. Instead of addressing the issue directly, she started dropping hints. At first, it was small things. One night, she let out a loud sigh while making herself a sad-looking salad, as if she wanted me to ask what was wrong. Another night, she mentioned how tiring it was to have to cook after a long day at her part-time job at the library, which I found ironic, considering that's exactly what I'd been doing all this time. But of course, I said nothing. I just went about my evening as if I didn't hear those passive-aggressive jabs. Then, on Friday night, things got more direct. I came home with dinner for Ethan and Lily, and she was in the living room, scrolling on her phone. I could tell she was waiting for me, probably hoping I'd caved and brought her something. When she saw I hadn't, she sighed and said, "Are you really still on this, Mark?" I just looked at her and shrugged, saying, "Well, since you say I don't do anything, I figured you'd like a taste of what that's like." That's when she lost her composure a bit. She stood up, put her hands on her hips, and said, "This is getting ridiculous, don't you think? I get that you're upset, but I already told you it wasn't meant to be taken seriously." But I wasn't going to back down. I told her, "If it's not a big deal, Sarah, why does it bother you so much? You laughed with your friend like I was some guy who doesn't even bother to cook for his family, so, I don't know. I'm just giving you a break from my non-existent cooking." She huffed and looked away, like she was trying to control her anger. Then she said, "That's not what this is about. It's about you refusing to get over something that wasn't even meant to hurt you. I thought you'd understand. I was just trying to keep things light with Stacy." I took a deep breath, trying not to respond with sarcasm. It felt like we were just going in circles. "Look, Sarah, it's not that hard to say. Actually, my husband cooks every night. Why is that so complicated? I don't get it. You didn't even try to defend me. You just went along with it." She looked at me, and for the first time, I could see she didn't have a quick comeback. She opened her mouth, then closed it, as if she were actually thinking about it. I thought this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Maybe she was finally going to understand why I was so upset. But instead, she just shook her head and said, "Well, I still don't see why you're getting so worked up over a simple joke." And with that, she walked off to the kitchen, probably to microwave some leftovers from who knows when. I was frustrated, obviously. It felt like I'd hit a brick wall. I went to check on the kids, tucked them in, and then went to bed, trying to let it go for the night. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were going to be stuck like this until one of us broke. The next day, Saturday, the air was thick with tension. We both went through our usual routines with the kids, acting normal in front of them, but as soon as they weren't around, it was like we were ignoring each other. I was hoping she'd try to talk it out, but she just kept to herself. It was like we were both too stubborn to make the first move, and neither of us was going to back down. Then came Sunday morning. Normally, she makes a big breakfast on the weekends, pancakes or French toast. But this time she just sat in the kitchen, sipping her coffee and scrolling on her phone, as if she were waiting for something. Finally, she looked at me and said, "So are you just going to sit there and not help with anything?" I knew where this was going, but I decided to play along a little. I said, "I thought you'd be happy to have a break from me not cooking." That set her off. She put her mug down with a clink and finally let out what she was thinking. "You're being so petty, Mark. You know that. You're dragging this out way too long just to prove a point. And maybe I wouldn't have to if you'd just apologize instead of downplaying it," I said, keeping my cool as best I could. "I don't get why it's so hard. All I wanted was for you to say I'm sorry for making me look like a slacker in front of your friends." She stared at me for a moment, and I could tell this time she was really considering it. Finally, she sighed and said, "Fine, Mark. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I made you feel like you weren't doing enough. But it's also exhausting having to cook for myself after a long day. I don't know. It's been hard on me, too." Part of me wanted to just accept the apology and let everything go back to normal, but another part was still annoyed. I thought, "Yeah, I know. I also cook every night after work. It's not exactly easy for me either." She nodded, looking more defeated this time, and said, "Yeah, I know. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective." We were quiet for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. It was weird, because I could tell she was starting to get it, but at the same time, she wasn't quite there yet. Then she said, "Look, I get that you're upset, but are we really going to keep this up? I don't want Ethan and Lily to feel like something's wrong between us." And she was right. I didn't want the kids to feel the tension, and I definitely didn't want to keep dragging this out. But I was also struggling to just let it go after feeling so disrespected. So I told her, "Look, Sarah, I'll start bringing you dinner again, okay? But I need you to understand why I was so upset. I'm not being petty just for the sake of it. I work hard, and I want that to mean something to you too." She nodded, and finally, it seemed like she got it. She didn't say much, just a small, quiet, "I'm sorry." And for the first time in days, it actually felt genuine. I knew we still had things to work out, but at least we were moving forward. The tension in the air eased a bit, and while everything wasn't back to normal, I felt like we had finally broken through that wall. And yeah, it might have taken several days of awkwardness, but at least now she seemed to understand. For the first time since this all started, I felt like maybe we were on the same page, or at least getting close. After our talk, everything felt lighter, though not completely normal. We weren't arguing or anything, but there was still a lingering awkwardness, like a rubber band stretched almost to its limit. I could tell Sarah was feeling it too, and I wasn't sure if it was because she genuinely felt bad or was just waiting for me to get over it all. Either way, the tense silence was better than arguing, so I decided to move forward. That Monday, I brought dinner home for everyone again. I was ready to get back to our usual routine, partly because I missed it and partly because I wanted things to feel normal again. And look, even though I was still a little irritated, I wanted to put it behind me. There comes a point where you have to decide that moving on is better than holding a grudge, right? When I got home with the bags of food like usual, she seemed genuinely relieved. I saw her face light up a little when she saw I'd brought something for her too. She didn't say anything, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor, as if she was finally realizing how much that small gesture of bringing dinner meant. That night, as we were eating, she made a point to ask me how my day was, which was new. Usually, she'd ask the basics, but this time she was actually listening, asking follow-up questions, and looking at me like she cared about the answer. Honestly, it felt good. It's not that we didn't talk before, but after all this, I appreciated her making a little extra effort to show she cared. And then, as if she'd read my mind, she said, "You know, Mark, I really do appreciate everything you do." I was surprised and looked up at her, trying to gauge if she was being sincere or just saying it. "Really?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though I'm sure she could tell I was taken aback. She nodded and said, "I know I messed up with Stacy. I should have defended you. I didn't realize how important it was to you, but I get it now." It was one of those rare moments when you know someone is being completely honest with you. I nodded, not quite sure what to say, and just said, "Thank you." I didn't want to drag it out or make the moment awkward by saying too much, so we just went back to eating in a comfortable silence. The rest of the week felt almost peaceful. She didn't bring it up again, but I could tell she was trying to show her appreciation in small ways. One night, after I put Ethan and Lily to bed, she had cleaned the kitchen without me asking. Another day, she texted me at work to ask what I felt like having for dinner that night, which was basically her way of saying, I'm handling dinner. It's funny, but those small gestures meant a lot to me, and I was grateful she was making an effort to fix things. But, of course, it couldn't all stay that simple. On Thursday, her friend Stacy showed up unannounced. I had just gotten home, was unpacking the food, and suddenly, there she was, at the door, like the ghost of awkward conversations past. Stacy came in with her usual boisterous energy, laughing and making casual comments with Sarah like nothing had ever happened. I kept my cool, but I have to admit, I was a little tense just seeing her. I had no idea if Sarah had told her the truth yet, or if Stacy still thought I was that guy who never cooked. Then, out of nowhere, Stacy blurts out, "So, has Mark finally picked up a spatula at home, or what?" She said it like it was the funniest thing in the world, looking at Sarah with a knowing glance, as if they shared a private joke. I looked over at Sarah, wondering if she was going to let this comment slide too, but this time, she actually stepped up. She cleared her throat, gave Stacy a little smile, and said, "Actually, Mark brings dinner home every night after work. He's been doing it for years." There was a short, awkward pause as Stacy looked between the two of us, clearly surprised. "Oh, I didn't know that," she said, her tone a bit flustered. She let out a nervous laugh and quickly changed the subject to some local gossip. I didn't need an apology from her or anything, but hearing Sarah correct her like that felt like closure. I could see that she'd finally understood, and she was proving it, even if it was a little uncomfortable for her. After Stacy left, Sarah came over and leaned against the counter, fidgeting with her phone. "I just wanted to make sure she knew the truth this time," she said, as if explaining herself. I smiled at her and told her I noticed. I was glad to see her follow through, and I think she could tell. Later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, she brought it up again, this time a little more open about her feelings. She told me, "I've been thinking about how I handled things with Stacy. I didn't realize it, but I think I was a little embarrassed to tell her how much you do." I felt this weird pressure to fit in with her experience, the whole men are useless vibe, even though it wasn't our reality. I didn't quite understand why that was an issue, but I could see she was being honest, and that's all I needed. I told her, "I appreciate you saying that. It's just that for me, everything I do isn't for show. I want to be a good husband and a good dad, and it hurts when people think I'm the opposite." She nodded, saying, "I get that now. I'm sorry it took me so long." I didn't want to push her any further because, honestly, that was enough for me. We both had things to learn from all this, and I could see she was making the effort to meet me halfway. I was ready to put it all behind me. In the end, the whole situation was a lot, but it brought us closer in a weird way. I felt like we understood each other a little better, and I didn't expect that. If someone had told me a week ago that this little joke would lead us to deep conversations about marriage and respect, I would have laughed. But there we were, coming out the other side, stronger for it, and that felt like a win. So, when we went to bed that night, there was no tension left, just the feeling that we were back on the same team, and that's all I really wanted from the start. After everything settled down, and honestly, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, things went back to normal pretty quickly. After Sarah spoke up to Stacy and admitted I'd been cooking all along, everything just calmed down. The kids were oblivious to what had happened between us, which was good, but even they seemed to notice the mood at home was lighter. For the first time in a while, everything felt easy, with no hidden tensions or awkward silences. I went back to my usual routine of bringing dinner home every night, and I know this sounds weird, but it actually felt better than before, like what I was doing was finally appreciated. I didn't need Sarah to say anything anymore. She showed it in little ways. She'd set the table or clear the dishes after we ate without me asking, which was new. It was as if she'd finally noticed everything I'd been doing all this time, and that small acknowledgement meant the world to me. The week after our big talk, we had one of those rare nights where we actually had time to sit and talk without any interruptions. Ethan and Lily were busy with some school projects in their rooms, so we ended up sitting at the kitchen table, just the two of us, sharing a meal I'd brought home. At first, it was just the usual small talk about our day, but then she surprised me. She put her fork down, looked at me, and said, "I've been thinking about what you said about wanting to be a good husband and father. I don't think I ever realized how much that meant to you." That caught me a little off guard. I didn't think she'd given it that much thought, but I guess our little crisis made her reflect too. I told her, "It's not even just about being good, Sarah. I don't want to be like my dad was. He was never around, never seemed to care. I know I work a lot, but I don't ever want you or the kids to feel like I'm not trying." She nodded and said, "I know that now. I guess I just took it for granted, thinking you'd always do those things just because, but I understand you do it because you want to, and I want to learn to appreciate that." Hearing that, honestly, was a relief. For the first time, I felt like she truly understood where this all came from, and that was enough for me. We kept talking for a little while longer, nothing too deep or serious, but just enough to feel like we were finally on the same page. That Friday, she did something that really touched my heart. I got home a little earlier than usual, and as soon as I walked in, I smelled something amazing cooking. This doesn't happen often because I'm usually the one making dinner, but there she was, in an apron, pulling a casserole out of the oven. She had the table set, had a cold beer ready for me, and even told Ethan and Lily it was a special dinner to thank Dad. I just stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The kids were excited because Mom was doing something different, and she had this big smile on her face. She took my hand and said, "I just wanted to give you a break. You deserve it after all those dinners." It was a small gesture, but it meant so much. It wasn't a fancy gourmet meal or anything, but she'd gone out of her way to make my favorite, a hearty lasagna, and make the evening special. And, for once, I was on the other end of it, just sitting back and enjoying a meal without having to worry about a thing. The kids were having a good time too. They kept joking, "Mom's gonna cook more often." And Lily said, "But Dad's the real chef." It was nice to see that they also appreciated what I do in their own way, even if they didn't fully understand what had happened between us. After dinner, Sarah insisted I stay seated while she cleaned up, which isn't the norm. She told me to just relax, that I'd earned it. It felt strange, like I wasn't used to being taken care of like that, but it was a good kind of strange. She genuinely seemed happy to do it, and it was clear she wanted to make things right. Later that night, as we were just relaxing on the couch, watching some mindless TV, she turned to me and said, "I know I've said it, but really, Mark, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let that joke with Stacy slide. You do so much for us, and I never want you to feel like I don't value it." I didn't have much to say in return. I just thanked her and told her the whole situation had made me realize how important it is to feel seen in your own home. We're not perfect, but I feel like this whole thing brought us a little closer. It helped us understand what we want from each other a little better. Since then, everything's been easier. We're back to our usual routines, but now it feels like we're both a little more considerate. She doesn't just assume I'll handle everything, and I no longer hold a grudge about the jokes with Stacy. We're communicating better, and honestly, I feel like we both grew from this. I've always thought that relationships take work, but sometimes it's the smallest problems that teach the biggest lessons. So yeah, it was just a misunderstanding that got a little out of hand, but we're stronger for it now. And the next time someone like Stacy makes a comment, I have no doubt that Sarah will step in and set the record straight. We're both learning, we're both trying, and at the end of the day, that's all I can really ask for. It's funny how something that seemed so small ended up being exactly what we needed to get a little closer. And I guess that's the real victory in all of this. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.